too have always been invisible. Even now, as I recount this story, I am just a shadow lurking behind the light of others' lives. Nobody notices me. Nobody sees the thoughts brewing quietly in my mind. I was born in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, your family, and your failures. My childhood was a mixture of quiet suffering and unnoticed misery. I learned early that the world doesn't care about those who can't stand out, and I was never meant to stand out. My family, if you can even call them that, were absent in all ways that mattered. My father was a man who shouted more than he spoke, a man whose fists could communicate everything he could not put into words. My mother, she was distant, a ghost in the house, floating from one room to another without acknowledgement of my existence. School was no sanctuary either. I was neither popular nor talented. I was just there. One of those faces in the background that no one remembers. I suppose it was this invisibility that taught me to observe, to watch others, to study their habits, their weaknesses. And from this observation grew a strange fascination with control. If the world would not notice me, at least I could notice it. And eventually, I realized I could manipulate it. I could bend it to my will. By the time I moved to the city, I was 24. The 90s in this urban sprawl were both chaotic and dull. The streets were alive, but only superficially. The city was full of people chasing dreams, flashing lights, and desperate hopes, but underneath it all, I saw the emptiness. I had no friends. No one to answer to. No one to stop me from thinking the things I thought. It was liberating, terrifying, and intoxicating all at once. I first noticed him, a figure so unlike me that he was impossible to ignore. He was charismatic, full of life, and completely unaware of the shadows gathering around him. His name was Michael. Everyone loved Michael. People in the streets, his co-workers straw. The days grew colder, and the city lights reflected off puddles like shards of glass. My plan was coming together. Every detail had been studied, every movement rehearsed in my mind. I had observed Michael for weeks now, memorizing his routines, his habits, the rhythm of his life. It was astonishing how oblivious people could be to the shadow stalking them, and Michael was no exception. He moved through the city like a beacon, unguarded, unsuspecting, and beautiful in his normality. I found my spot near his building one evening, blending into the crowd like a mannequin among mannequins. My hoodie hid my expression, the red sneakers made no noise on the wet pavement, and my eyes recorded everything. I watched him exit the building, laughing with a neighbor, the world completely unaware of the invisible presence that followed. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from anticipation. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, yet reality was different. He was real, and the air between us carried an energy that no imagination could replicate. I wanted him to notice me, to see me as more than a shadow, but not yet. Patience had become a virtue I had honed like a weapon. That night, I approached him casually under the guise of a passerby. A small notebook in my hand, a fake question on my lips about the neighborhood, nothing that could trigger suspicion. He smiled politely, and my stomach twisted in a mix of exhilaration and dread. Every small interaction was a rehearsal, a test of control. Weeks passed. Each day I observed him, slowly becoming part of the city's background. The pedestrians, the traffic, the neon glow, they all worked in my favor. I was patient because I had to be. Rushing would ruin everything. But inside, the anticipation burned like fire. I was both calm and electric, invisible and omnipresent. One evening, he exited the building alone. The street was damp from a recent rain, mist curling around the street lamps. My heart raced. I had chosen this night. The fluorescent lights of the holding cell were harsh, unflinching, unforgiving. I had never been so visible, so exposed. The anonymity I had cherished for years was gone. The walls pressed in on me, yet the echoes of that night remained vivid, unstoppable. I replayed every step, every shadow, every click of my red sneakers on wet asphalt. It had all happened exactly as I had planned, yet the world was finally watching. Sitting there, I was forced to confront the reality I had avoided for so long. The streets I had mastered, the shadows I had commanded, the anonymity I had wielded like a weapon, they no longer belonged to me. I was now subject to the judgment of others, scrutinized under the harsh light of society. Reporters would dissect my life, psychologists would analyze my mind, and strangers would condemn me for an act that had been, in its own way, a declaration of existence. The interrogation room was cold. The detective's eyes bored into me, searching for something: remorse, anger, insight. I offered none. Words were unnecessary. My story had been written in actions. Every motion, every hesitation, every carefully calculated second had conveyed more than language ever could. He wanted to understand the why behind the act, but understanding is a privilege the world often denies to those it deems monsters. I remembered the moment I first realized that invisibility is intoxicating. As a child unnoticed, I felt powerless. But observation, patient and deliberate, became a kind of dominion. Watching the city move, watching Michael laugh, watching pedestrians ignore my presence, it gave me life, a sense of power. That power, that meticulous control, had defined me more than any conventional relationship ever could. Now, stripped of freedom, the question remained: did I regret it? Not entirely. There is a cold satisfaction in knowing that you have acted with precision, that you have transformed thought into a irrevocable reality. But satisfaction is fleeting. The way. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and the world outside continued its rhythm, indifferent to the chaos I had instigated. Every headline, every newspaper clipping, every televised report was a reminder of my existence, but also a reflection of the distance between perception and reality. People saw the crime, they judged, they speculated, yet they could never truly grasp the meticulous patience that preceded it. My thoughts, my observations, my rehearsed movements, they remained mine alone. The city had become a theater, and I, once invisible, was now a reluctant actor on its stage. Behind the bars of my cell, I could only watch from a distance as society attempted to narrate my story. Friends of Michael mourned, strangers speculated, journalists sensationalized, but none understood the intricate pattern of obsession, calculation, and execution that led to the act. They saw the final movement. I had lived through every preparatory step, every shadow, every heartbeat that went unnoticed. Nightmares visited me, but not as punishment. They were echoes of the thrill, memories of the night compressed into fragments of light and sound. I saw the wet streets of New York glimmering with neon, the reflections of a city oblivious to the presence of shadows. My red sneakers clicked softly against the pavement, a rhythm that had once been my companion, my secret code to navigate the invisible world. Now, even in confinement, that rhythm haunted me. Letters arrived occasionally from strangers claiming understanding, sympathy, or fascination. Some pleaded for insight, others for confession, and a few for absolution. I read them methodically, dissecting their language, analyzing their assumptions. They were like mannequins themselves, frozen in their perspectives, unable to see beyond the narrative framed by the media. They sought the why, as if motivation could be fully understood through words. Motivation, I had learned, is not always a linear narrative, it is an amalgamation.